As I mentioned, if you have one of the Android development phones, with the exception of the Galaxy Nexus, you need to get the Google USB driver. Right? If you have anything else, you get the one for that manufacturer. It's a very standard process for downloading it. If you have one of the Google developer phones, or I should say the Android developer phones, you have to use what we call the SDK manager. As I mentioned, we're going to talk a whole bunch about the Android SDK manager a little later. But let me just show you enough to get that driver for right now. All right, so I'm going to go out here, go to on my toolbar, I'm inside of Eclipse, click on the Android SDK manager. It's going to go ahead and launch that in. Right, when that comes up, this is kind of my management screen for keeping my system up to date. I'm going to draw that onto the main screen here. I have two screens that happen to open up on the other screen. I'm going to go ahead and scroll down here down towards the extras. Get down here into extras. You'll see one of the ones you have here is Google USB driver. And it may be checked, it might not be checked. But notice that right now on my machine it's not installed. It turns out because I happen to have a Galaxy Nexus, I use the Samsung driver. But we can go ahead and get to that here, right? Because I've got it highlighted. And all I do is click on Install One Package. Right? Now you may see a different number there. If your system's a little bit out of date, you may want to install some other stuff. You can go ahead and let it do that. But in my case, I just need the one. So I'm going to say Install One Package. See, it's going to Android SDK license. I'm going to say, yep, go ahead. I'm going to accept that license. Go ahead and say Install. And then at that point, it'll just go ahead and download that onto my system. Okay, now, one thing to be careful about is that when it says install, it's being a little bit misleading. What install means in this case is it really just means it downloaded the package onto my system, right? Because what I can do now is go out to my drive and we can see where it's located at. So here I'm out in my file system. Remember that when I installed my initial SDK, I put it inside of this folder. Right, so you're going to go to whatever folder you initially installed your Android SDK into. Going to go inside of there. Going to go into the SDK folder. Going to go down in here to Extras, then Google, and then USB driver. And then you'll find the drivers right in there, depending on what version of the OS you have. So when you walk through the process of doing the USB setup, this is where you'll find that driver. But again, the key thing I want to make really clear here, this is only if you have one of the Android developer phones that's not the Galaxy Nexus. If you have any other phone besides the Nexus 1 and Nexus S, you want to download the driver for your manufacturer. It'll be just like downloading any other driver. It'll download to wherever you tell it to go. The only one with the special handling was this one where the Google USB driver, because it always goes to a fixed location. Right? Most drivers you download allow you to specify where it goes to. In this case, it goes to a fixed location, so I just want to show you how to do that. But no matter what driver you're using, once you have the driver installed, you'll be able to deploy from Eclipse to your real phone just as easily as we deployed to the emulator earlier. So it really is that simple. You just connect it up and you deploy, and it just works. Again, we'll talk a whole bunch about some of the other tools involved shortly, so if you do run into any issues, how we can kind of resolve those issues. But for the overwhelming majority of you, just download the USB driver for your phone. Right? If it was Nexus 1 or Nexus S, use the process I just showed you. If it's any other phone, you go to where it points to for that particular phone to download the driver. In all these cases, install the USB driver just as you normally would. Again, we gave you a page for the instructions step-by-step to do that. At that point, phone's connected up. You go ahead and deploy, and life is good.